Good morning. My name is Kira Seipler, Director of Operations for the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. On behalf of AFMX, our Board of Directors, and our entire staff, welcome to AFMX Virtual Edition 2021. Before we get started with our next event, we would like to thank our presenting sponsors, AFME Foundation, Albuquerque Film Office, and Film Liaison Cyndy McCrossen, Albuquerque the Magazine, Bernalillo County Commissioner Stephen Michael Cazada, Brezza Terrena Italia Olive Oil, Comcast NBC Universal, Real Solutions Airport Meet and Greet, Sunny 505, the Baker Law Group, University of New Mexico Film and Digital Arts, Larry Schwartz and Wells Fargo Advisors, Yamaha Entertainment Group, and Jouska Road Productions. For the complete lineup and ticket sales, please visit our website at AFMXNM.com. Now to introduce our next event. This is our center stage number 3, The Business of Locations with Todd Christiansen and Cyndy McCrossen. Please note that during our conversation, our audience members will be allowed to ask questions during the Q&A. All you got to do is just type your question in the chat box and we will do our very best to answer all of your questions. Please note that all the Q&As and center stage conversations will be recorded and available online through October 11th. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Executive Director of AFMX, Ivan Wiener. With 28 years of experience in hospitality and entertainment, Ivan has become a key resource and the go-to person for above-the-line talent and executives. He is the founder and executive director of Albuquerque Film and Music Experience, which began in 2013 with the support and participation of Robert Rufford. Ivan also owns and operates Real Solutions, which provides airport meet and greet services for the film industry at Albuquerque Sunport, personal assistance for talent working in New Mexico, and consulting film productions through his vast network of contacts that saves time and money for clients. Ivan has been a producer on several short films, television shows, documentaries, and commercials, and is now producing feature films, television, and documentaries. Ivan is the former head concierge of the historic Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C., and a former personal assistant to the late actor and director, Dennis Hopper. So please welcome my friend, Ivan Wiener.
I am very excited to moderate, this discussion this morning. It's not often that I moderate. We have so many amazing, talented people, involved with AFMX that we select to moderate. But this one in particular, to me, is a really special one because, when it comes to the business of locations, there's signs all over town that you see with different codes pointing with different arrows to different directions to get to locations and sets and the like. And people ask me all the time, "Oh, I saw the sign. What's filming in town?" And a lot of times I don't even know because I'm not sure what's going on behind the scenes. And when it comes to confidentiality of producing shows, it's not really open to the general public. But we're going to take a dive today with Todd Christiansen and Cyndy McCrossen about locations, and we're going to get into some nitty-gritty about details of what it takes, to find locations, how you satisfy producers, some surprises that you present to assure you, win that business here in New Mexico. And the location managers and scouts are a key resource in making things happen when it comes to the economic impact of production selecting Albuquerque and New Mexico, as the place to film. And there's a reason why we're number one to live and work in the film industry. And locations managers and scouts, they have a lot to do with that. So without further ado, let's get into welcoming our guests, Todd and Cyndy. Todd started working in the film industry in 1995 as an assistant location manager and became a location manager in 1999. He has worked on such films as Syriana, of the Off the Map, There Will Be Blood, Moneyball, The Hunger Games, Sicario 1 and 2, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Todd's worked on over 30 movies and another 25 scouted. He won the COLA award for Moneyball, and for Best Team and Professional of the Year, as well as the first LMGI award that was international for best locations on Sicario. Congratulations, Todd. Big, big honors. Cyndy McCrossen, a Raton native and a graduate of Albuquerque High School and the University of New Mexico, is the film liaison for the city of Albuquerque. And congratulations, because you just started this position recently, and it's great to have you in the position.
Thank you.
She serves as a contact point for both productions and the community in welcoming new productions into Albuquerque. She has worked as a location scout on many television shows, such as Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. I think we've heard of those. And she was with both productions since the beginning. So we may hear a story or two about Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul on locations. She's also worked on location scouting for other shows too, such as Preacher, In Plain Sight, and most recently, Outer Range. Todd, Cyndy, welcome and thank you for your time. Let's jump right into it.
Thanks, Ivan.
Absolutely. Todd, what does locations mean in the film industry?
Well, that's a good question and a long answer. The locations basically are the foundation for filming. We're the first people hired. Sometimes I've been hired before a production designer. Sometimes, most of the times after, it's usually the producer, production designer, director, and myself, or a location manager. And then I go out. Usually it's like 2 weeks going out to find the basic things. I read the script, I break it down. And in breaking down the script as part of locations, I'm one of the first, we're one of the first people to read the script. And then I break it down and then find out which are the key places to look for first. Sometimes I look for everything at the same time. And that's a curious way to go about it. But we find the locations which become the basis. Like they might want to build a house, and I need to find the exterior of the house first before they can start to build it, so they know where the windows and the doors are, so that they can match those things. And so there's a lot of different parts to finding locations, to making it work. And then also, while you're doing that, I have to be aware, and I should use we as location managers have to be aware of where we're going to park the crew, where the base camp is going to be, where I can park the working trucks, what's the neighborhood, what are the permits that are required, how many permissions do we need to get, do I need to close the road, do I need to do ITC, there's while I'm scouting, I need all those questions are on my mind as to which places I find and give to the production designer or the director. So there's more to it, and I'm sure I'll add to that, but that's a basis of the beginning.
Yeah, it seems like over your career, you've worked on a lot of features. Cyndy, it seems like television is your angle with scouting and locations. Let's talk about, Cyndy, if you can talk about the difference in searching for locations for film and features compared to television.
Sure. So series work is bread and butter for a scout. When I would be brought on to scout for a feature, I would my work would finish when the crew landed. So I might have 3 months, 5 months before the show arrived, all of the cameras and lights, etc. And then I'm unemployed. Whereas a series, they're making an hour of TV every 7 to 9 days. So it's almost the difference of publishing a magazine or a book. It would be your feature film. Publishing a daily or a weekly newspaper is working on a series. And so if you've watched a television show, and probably in that half hour to hour television show, you've maybe seen 10 to 12 locations. The characters are here, the characters are there, they're running down an alley, they're climbing up in a building, they're in their grandmother's house, they're in a church, all in 1 hour. And so each location that you see on the screen, I've probably shown them 6 to 12 options. And so some of the options are, I think maybe in a feature, you would have more flexibility to choose this location. This is it. We're going to make it happen. We're going to move the whole crew, an hour up the road because this place is so special. In the TV show, it's like boom, 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 turn it around. So sometimes the options that you're giving them are more logistical. We only have half a day in this church, find grandma's house next door. And so I'm showing, many options that will work creatively and logistically. And, half of those end up, we never visit, it's sort of like an audition, a location is auditioned by then after I've presented my photos, the production designer, director, producer will, whittle it down to the top 3. We'll go visit those, and then it's whittled down to the 1. And but then so that, when I say bread and butter for a location scout, it's I'm off to the races. The next director arrives, I'm in the van with them, and they're filming back over here, and then it keeps going like that for 5 months, prepping, shooting, wrapping, and then that series might land 5 years, 10 years, with the franchise of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. So it it's ongoing. If I have a good relationship with a series, I might, and they get picked up, I might end up working on that series for 5 years.
I think, it's very similar. You're somewhat in the service industry because you're looking to satisfy the production coming in, landing that business for the state and the city. How important are relationships, not only within the industry, but within the community, Todd? As a locations manager, people own properties, tell us about some of the relationship building that needs to take place in locations.
Well, just, thanks a lot for that one. Just to start out, I've filmed thousands of locations. I can go back to every location and they're happy to see me. And that's because you make friends, you let people in to the process of what you're doing. And you talk to everybody. You send letters out to everybody, whatever it might be. You have meetings, community meetings, neighborhood meetings, city, county meetings that are with the state. Any of those things that are required. I've sat in front of many councils, in order to explain what we're doing. In the explanation of what we're doing, I think one of the things that made me successful was that I was excited about being able to do something and being able to convince those councils, those peoples, those neighborhoods that we could do this in a way that they would be, they might be bothered some, but not so much because they know what's going on, which I'm a full disclosure location manager, that I tell them exactly what's going on so that there's no surprises. And there's always somebody that's upset by it. And then I deal with them. I've had people yell at me and all I say to them is like, how can I help you? How can I help you? Can I get you a hotel room? Whatever it might be, that I address those. When somebody starts yelling, that like the producer is like, Todd, locations, get over here, and then I deal with it, and I deal with it in a way that's giving, and luckily, like I worked on movies. I worked on fairly good sized movies. So I knew that I had a budget and some money that I could deal with things in a way that was respectful. A lot of times, you know what? They don't want any money. They don't want a hotel room. They want to be heard. And I'm there to listen, and that's part of that relationship. Like I'm there to listen to the city council about their, what their fears are about doing a certain thing in the city, and then how I address it or how a location manager addresses it. So there's a lot of ways. I'm like, I get excited when I get to talk in front of city councils and places like that and neighborhoods, to let them know about the process and how excited I am, and that they get to watch it. I'll bring city council members down to where we're filming. I'll bring neighborhood people in behind the camera. I get permission to do that. And they know that giving me the permission, the director and the producers, to doing that it means that more than likely it'll be smooth filming. You know, it'll be an easy process, and most of them are agreeable to that.
Yeah, so it seems like, locations, really are also ambassadors of the city and the community when it comes to productions. Cyndy, talking about relationships, there's a certain location that you're really familiar with up on Piedmont Northeast.
Hey, where it
Quote
is.
unquote, Walter White's house from Breaking Bad. So, when the show first started and that location was utilized, it was a great location, great house. Tell us about that relationship after Breaking Bad ended, because it became a tourist destination, which a lot of locations here in Albuquerque become. I mean, they have a Breaking Bad tour. This house in particular, some friends were in town a few weeks ago. They said, "Oh, we have to go by the Walter White house." So, I took them up there and past the car wash. We get to the house and it seemed like just they have gated it in. They've raised the walls. They put a metal roof on as opposed to shingles. The famous scene where the pizza was tossed by Bryan Cranston. I think they've had issues at that house because it's become such a tourist spot. So let's talk about that. What's that relationship like now compared to then?
Sure. Well, I spent several years working at that house and knew the family quite well at the time, and then got to know the neighborhood quite well. And just to speak to what Todd had said, working in production, we try to imbue that quality in all the crew when they land, that we are guests. We are guests in this neighborhood. We want to be invited back. We want to be polite when we're on the streets. We want to give people full access to their homes while production is there. We want to come back. We want this to be a sustainable industry in the state. And so the relationships that we build in a community are, they're imperative. They're top of the list of, especially in a show that's recurring like Breaking Bad has been. It's if you burn a neighborhood, and it has happened, that not so much on the relationship front, but a house might get sold out from underneath a series and renovated. That happened with Jesse's house in the country club area, and the writers were nimble on their feet and rewrote it to accommodate that in their script. And we worked with the new owner. But so and our job, Todd's and my job is to maintaining that relationship in a community, and instilling that in the crew. You pick up your trash, you don't throw cigarettes butts in a desert terrain, all that kind of thing. And the crews here are really, I'm so appreciative of them for understanding that. So the Walter White house is a phenomenon. It doesn't always happen. It's, people still go to, a Christmas Story house. There's no, if that hits you, you can't predict that. You can't say, hey, I want to scout your house and you're going to be on the next tour bus, of Hollywood, the New Mexico filming locations. You never know. And the first season that show was filmed, it was a tough one to get locations, because you have to kind of explain, well, what's the story about? Well, it's about a teacher who has gets involved in drugs and yada, yada. And they're like, oh, I don't want to be in that. And then the next year, everyone's like calling you up going, hey, do you need more locations for Breaking Bad? I'd love to, have my house in that, and I couldn't get people to open the door, on the first time around. But so there's no way that the homeowner could have anticipated the crowd, loyalty to that location and their desire to be part of it. And so a lot of ways, unfortunate ways, it was promoted on the internet, and and it's a new thing too, that the word of, and it's so, how easy is it to find that on a map, and then people make a map and you can find it, you can come from another country and be, boom, I know where it is. You're a tractor trailer long haul driver, and you're like, hey, I'm in Albuquerque, I got some time to burn, I'm going to take my tractor trailer to go see Walter White's house. And so that's the impact that now the city is trying to mediate. The production's been amazing. They coming up now for Balloon Fiesta, where the production is offered to have a barricading company, divert traffic. The city planners, we've been working on traffic soothing for that house. And by rights, the homeowner changed the look of the house. So, but I've been trying to help them with kind of like lessening their internet presence. The photos were never updated on Google. So the photo on Google Maps, you go and it looks like Walter's White House. It doesn't look anything like that. So I'm helping them to obscure their house and to like show really what it looks like, so that maybe the attraction is a little less. It's been hard in the neighborhood, but the city's been the neighborhood association, everybody feels concern and love for the family and wants to help.
Yep.
But anyhow, you never know that that's going to happen, really.
Yeah, so you just mentioned something really interesting, access through Google and the internet, with locations and people coming to see things. But let's talk about any experiences with productions you've both had. And we can start with Todd, using virtual location scouting or visualization, especially with COVID. Has that been utilized within the locations management department? What are the benefits and drawbacks of using technology for that purpose?
Well, once Google came and I use a Mac, so once it came to Mac, it helped me in many ways. In a lot of ways, it helped me find parking while I was, searching for neighborhoods and things like that. It would tell me where the church was or the school or where there was a big parking lot that I could find. So I utilized it like that more than anything. I think to find a location, it's key in many ways to see what a neighborhood looks like, or see what a landscape looks like, to see what the access to that landscape is, which is really important, because you might see a picture on the State Film website and go out there, but there's a gate that's closed. So you then, like, who's the owner? They might not have the information, or they might have it. So there's a lot of things. I've only done some scouting during COVID. I scouted like I normally do. I go out there when the production came in. I was tested. They were all tested. We did multiple vehicles, and things like that, which are different. I'm usually, either in my car driving around or in a van, and there's a conversation that takes place, or there's a conversation between the production designer and the director, and I listen, because they're giving me information. They don't know that necessarily, but I'm getting information from them. So some of that stuff got broken up.
So Cyndy, with the television side and so many locations with COVID, when things kind of came to a halt nationwide with productions, were you doing a lot? And I guess now, as the liaison for the city in the film office, have you been doing a lot with productions in getting them, location sites, live with the phone as you're out on locations, or were people coming in and just being really safe about it? Let's talk about how you handled that.
Sure. And so there was sort of two questions there about how I utilize technology and part of scouting. Maybe we can circle back around to that, because it's sort of been an evolution over the decade, with, a lot of it. I use internet tools a lot to find ownership of places, because Todd and I, sometimes we're scouting in very remote places. There's no mailbox, there's no house, how do you find out who owns that property? And so some of the tools that we use online, I'm great if you're like missing a loved one or something like that. I can find like their latest phone number and their the property, where's their, do they still own the house that they used to have address at? And so I in the past, I'd have to go, there was some Breaking Bad locations where it was really the first time that I used technology. So that must have been like 2010. The request was for a house with 360-degree views all around it, but we're often have strictures of being within a zone, driving distance of the stages, 30 to 60 miles tops. And so I was like, oh my God, where am I going to find this, 360-degree views, in an urban area? And so I was flying over in Google, and I could pinpoint a few things. But then when I got there, it's an old trailer. I have no idea who owns this. I had to go into the county assessor, search on microfiche, who paid taxes last. Darn it all, I was a P.O. box. I had to write a postcard and hope that this person got it, which they did, which was awesome. But that was in old school days. But now I have some certain tools where I can find property ownership. I can, reach out directly to somebody, but for a remote location. But anyhow, so the COVID, the state really worked well with productions, having testing and safety protocols for large groups, and how we were going to work in pods and with testing and whatnot to keep safe. And like Todd mentioned, a location scout is often a very lonely job. And driving in my Subaru, and I had started on Outer Range, which is a Western with a sci-fi flair series on Amazon, and I was working in northern New Mexico, Mora, Las Vegas area, that kind of thing. And so lots of driving by myself, but then also residential, there were some residential needs. And I like to do this anyhow when I scout a house, is that I leave a little handwritten note on a business card with a piece of bright orange tape that I stick on the door.
Can't miss it.
Movies are coming to town, and either they call me back or they don't. If they're interested, great, I want to talk to them. If they don't care and they throw it in the circular file drawer, trash can, great, that's weeded out, people who aren't interested in film. So usually it gives a homeowner chance to check me out, look on the internet, make sure I'm legit, call me, we talk, and okay, yeah, this sounds interesting, I'd like you to come visit.
Going back to the relationship building.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's COVID time, so and I worked on some small commercials that were actually directed remotely. We had a 3-person team, and we were on Zoom. The director was on Zoom as we went through the house, and the cameraman filmed with no director or producer in town. But so the houses, that would call me back and say, I'd like to be part of this film and learn more about it. I'd say, okay, that's, we are in a pandemic. Can you please open all the doors and windows and turn on the lights and step outside? And here comes the trust. I'm asking, so are you going out of town anytime soon? Do you work nights or morning? Are you home? Because we might, need to, and yeah, you're going to be in town, next month when we come, or I want to. So here they've stepped outside, they've let me into their house with a camera and photograph all their worldly goods and share it with my friends.
Let me ask you this, continue on the technology side, Todd, you can jump into 360 cameras and drones. Have they been utilized more for locations over the past several years?
Not for me. When I take them out, the DP has brought, on Only the Brave, he brought a drone. We used a drone a lot on that movie. But I wanted to piggyback on something about going to neighborhoods and places
Sure.
where we can't get in. First off, you can't put a letter into a mailbox. It's a federal offense.
Right.
So I let people know that you can't put a sign on a freeway. You have to do it on an off ramp. But what I do is I have a letter. I have a logo on the letter, which is usually the name of the production, and the state film office and a contact, and the city film office and a contact, and my name and contact, so that they can call and check on me, rather than calling. I want them to check on me so that they feel secure in me coming into their house. Like Cyndy says, I go into houses, they don't know me. I mean, they've never met me, and I'm taking pictures of all these different things, so it's
it's interesting because the location managers or scouts that I know personally, one of my close friends is Puck Stare. You know Puck.
Yes.
I've seen her work on features. We've shot a short together, and watching her professionalism and attention to detail. I'm assuming just from the conversation we've had thus far this morning, there are some skills that are needed by people if they want to be location managers or scouts. And, the things that come to mind are sales, on the side of the location owner and the production producers, directors, public relations, being able to put out fires. Tell me more about the skills that are needed, because with the increased production that's going to happen here in Albuquerque, especially with Netflix expansion and NBC Universal and other potential studios coming in, what are the requirements? Are there any, if there are any, or the skill set needed to be a location manager?
Well, let me jump on, then Cyndy can give her piece. But calmness has always served me, to be calm, and also to know what you can and what you can't tell a location. I mean, there's only so much that you can't tell them what the script is, or all that. So it's like learning what you can and cannot tell them. We sign NDAs, and after the NDA, before the NDA is signed, I find out what I can tell a location, because what kind of information. Like when I did Sicario, we went to that first house that was in the movie, and it was this family, and the daughter wanted this to happen. The mother didn't, and I convinced them to let me shoot, scout the place. And they went back. They were getting in their car. They got back in, and so I had to lean on the daughter a little bit to convince them to do it. And there's money involved. They were interested in money that was involved in doing it, and insurance and things like that. So you need all the information to be able to give them, to help convince them to know that they're protected, to know that there's value in them doing it. And like Cyndy said, like we never know where a tour will go, or somebody who's going to grab onto something. And that location, she finally, and then the grandmother was there, and this woman had raised 6 kids on her own. What's the name of the movie? And they were from Mexico. And I said, Sicario. And they went, oh, yeah. Our cousin was killed by Sicario. Sicario means assassin. And then I said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. They said, so what happens here? I said, well, there's Sicario there. What happens to them? I said, well, they kill most of them. Okay, we'll do it.
Oh, wow. Wow. It's amazing some of the stories, that come out of location scouting and, trying to secure a location. Let's, Cyndy, I want to talk to you about locations being a character in a TV show. I'm approached all the time. People say, oh my God, I love that show. And I say, oh yeah, it was filmed here in Albuquerque, or a movie. And they're absolutely surprised. Let's talk about Breaking Bad briefly, because Albuquerque, Vince Gilligan and his team created it to be a character in the show, and they did it beautifully.
Mm-hmm. So the just one aside to what Todd had said about what skills are important. Just touch back on that real quick. I think it's really important that a location scout has experience with a production. It's a lot of people think that they can be I have a camera, everybody has a camera. I know locations, I'd make a great scout, but they need to have that experience with a production, just knowing how production operates, because you can't really tell, you can't tell a neighbor, a homeowner, a business owner what to expect if you've never seen it yourself. And so it's really important that, yes, this calm-natured person knows what it looks like when the freaking circus arrives, and to, to know that, yeah, I can't get down this narrow lane with the trees hanging over, because my transport department is going to take out all those trees, and there's no room to turn around, a 40-foot tractor trailer here. And, and what does an 80-foot condor look like, lighting up a whole neighborhood? Who's going to be affected by it? And so, these are all like background noise, for somebody like Todd and I, who have this experience that, we're making these calculations all the time. So I'm eliminating, locations off my internal list all the time. Nope, that, you know, that won't work, that won't work. And if you don't have the experience, if you haven't seen, you know, the big gorilla that's going to land, you know, you're not going to be as valuable as a scout. So anyhow, that was just my side on that.
I appreciate that. And, you know, talking to other directors, producers and the like, they always suggest, you know, people that want to get into the industry, you know, we have UNM Film and Digital Arts here. We have CNM, you know, that focuses a lot on the crew and training and classes. It seems like you're saying, get into the industry, get a job as a PA, start working your way up, and then know what that operation's about. And then you may want to move into locations.
And then, you know, over time, you know, I learned the details that are involved, you know, I mean, the only way you can learn the details of being a location manager is to be a location assistant and take direction. People said, like, how did you move up? I said, I took direction from really good location managers, and I moved up in 2.5 years as a manager, because I took direction and I felt like I could do it, you know, and so there's, you know, to do that job is about listening and taking directions, you know, to be able to be successful at it.
Absolutely. Yes. You know, I think it's like any other profession. You have to work your way up. And I really see locations, and I always have, as one of the top positions. You know, all of them are important within a production, but locations itself, you know, make or break a production. They really do. Let's switch over to the character that Albuquerque can play in TV shows or other places in New Mexico. You know, Cyndy, you know, it doesn't have to be Breaking Bad. It could be other productions you want to talk about as well. Todd, we want to hear on the film side also. Cyndy, kick it off.
Well, yeah, so started, you know, that's where my career really started, was with Breaking Bad. And the production wasn't sold on Albuquerque being the spot, but they, you know, super savvy writers, super creative people, they saw the value of, you know, our gritty little truck stuff, is which kind of, the barrios, the you know, the wealthy neighborhoods, the you know, 2 highways passing through, and if you look back at Breaking Bad, you know, some of their time-lapse photography of the scenery is just gorgeous. You know, it just like sets that tone, sets that, wow, edge of the desert, like, where are we, you know? And it had such huge fandom in Europe, you know, and all over the world, because people really hadn't seen this town, this, like, what goes on here, you know, and all the different characters that live here, and the you know, the new, the old, the multicultural feel of this city was really embraced by the production, and really served their story well. I've never since seen, you know, in TV shows, a lot of times we get, and features too, you don't get a full script when you start, you get an outline, you know, it's just roughed in, and you're like going in and highlighting all the locations. But it was like, it was written for me, you know, that little outline, it was like, and the sun rises over the sleepy city with the mountains in the background. I'm like, yeah, I need that point of view, you know, to show that. And right. It felt, you know, it was so exciting, like Todd said, to be like, yes, I need to find this, where would all these drug drops take place, you know? And so I'm like putting my head in, you know, like, where are the bodies buried, you know? I'm like method acting as a location scout. Is like, yes, you know, this is the dirt road that leads to nowhere. And sometimes you're like getting chills, you know, it's like, oh, I really shouldn't be down this road by myself, because this is where the bodies are buried. But so that's the building of the character of, you know, a series like that, you know, Better Call Saul. It's like, you know, it's like every location scout manager kind of, oh, they cringe when they read in a script, montage. And so that montage is like pops of different locations, you know, like, where are the drug drops? Where are they picking up all the drug drops? So, you know, like in 4 minutes of TV, you're gonna have to show 12 locations. And, you know, this culvert, this bridge, this behind this bush, you know, in this park, you know, and all different. And as that show went on, they didn't want to see the same things over and over again. So here you're in your 7th year of a franchise, and you're still trying to show fresh, you know. So I be an explorer too, in a town that I really know.
What's interesting when you say that is, you know, there's so many iconic locations that were selected for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul that are just seem to be in a lot of episodes. The doghouse and, you know, the different residents and stuff like that. The Crossroads Motel, you know, you see that, you know, consistently in the show. And, you know, so I mean, they really have become characters in the show. When I have visitors and we're driving around town, like, oh my God, that was in Breaking Bad. I mean, they recognize it. So it's really neat. Todd,
I mean,
let's talk about.
I just wanted to jump in. Is like, that's a great gift to New Mexico and to Albuquerque to be able to show Albuquerque as Albuquerque. I've never shown Albuquerque as Albuquerque, Santa Fe as Santa Fe. I am hired to cheat.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That's a really great point.
So like when I did the Valley of Gila, they wanted to do it as Texas, and so I had to I shot pictures to them, and I shot them to I shot it to show the mountains and to not show the mountains, you know, and I shot neighborhoods and different. And so I said, like, if you want to show. If you want this to be Texas, here's what you're shooting. You're shooting like this. But if you wanted to show it as a nondescript New Mexico town, or if you want to call it Albuquerque, then you got, you know, then it's a wider shot.
Let's talk about what we have cheated Albuquerque for, because I remember year one by Harold Ramis. They were going to shoot in the swamps of Louisiana, and that location fell through. So we get a call out here in Albuquerque. Like, are there any locations that can be utilized that we can convert to swampland? And it's like, we're in the middle of the desert. Wait, how can we do that? And it turned out we did it on the Rio Grande at the Hayat Tamaya, you know, down in their bosque, and you couldn't tell once it was up on the big screen. So Todd, let's talk about some things that you've worked on where we have cheated, you know, and Albuquerque represents other places or other locations in New Mexico.
You know, in the Men Who Stare at Goats, you know, I shot it played for Cleveland, I think North Carolina. You know, I had to, in like the Valley of Gila, I went out to the state fairgrounds and we made an entrance into a military base because it wasn't DOD approved, which is Department of Defense approved, that story. You know, and so when these things aren't approved, you can't use Kirkland. You know, you have to find a way to show something that looks like it's military without doing that. So I did that on a number of shows. On Paul, I shot it for California, Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming. But I knew I could cheat those shots because I know New Mexico. So I knew where to go to get those shots. And part of it is what I hope to do when I'm doing that is to convince the viewer, you know, the person who's watching the movie, that they're actually in those places, you know, and then that determines how I shoot a place and how I suggest to them how they shoot it, so that they can say that this is Cleveland, you know. And a lot of that is like interiors with, you know, a tight exterior. It can be something like that. But I shot it for Mexico, Phoenix, Tucson, Nogales, California, you know, for different parts in California, for 3 different military bases. You know, there's a lot of different, when I shoot those places and when I talk to producers, I've been to those places. And so I know what they look like. And so I tell them that I've been to those places, scouted a lot of different states and been to 48 of the states. So it's like, I know what some of those look like. So I have that information, or I do Google searches of those places in order to get it, or the art department gives me that information. So the whole cheating thing is that you give something to the director that he can shoot in a way to make the viewer believe they're in those places. I never want in my scouting to take the viewer away from that belief, you know. And so I do a lot of searching. I take a lot of pictures at a lot of different places and a lot of different angles to try to give them that information in order to get them to believe that it's the place. I got to let the production designer and the art department and the director and DP believe that this will work as a cheat.
Yeah, so Cyndy, in television, there's been TV shows that have been filmed here over the past, many years that have been located in other places around the country. So let's talk about that.
Yeah,
In Plain Sight, wasn't that supposed to be another city?
well, so no, the bulk of the show was not in another city per se, but each episode started with a flashback to some crime that happened that sent this person into witness protection
Gotcha.
program.
Yep. Yep.
The opener for each episode was a crime that happened in Hawaii, a crime, something that happened in Milwaukee. And so it might be, on television, very compact scene. I'm not, we're not showing like, if they're going to do an overview of the city, it's some footage that they have, of the skyline of Honolulu, whatever. And then you're inside the hotel with all the bougainvilleas and the atrium. And so so it goes back to the sensory thing that a location can bring to a story is, you hear the water fountain in the atrium, and the bougainvilleas, and like you sort of set this ambiance so it's textural. So, or it's a safe house in Mexico, and it's, the walls are peeling paint, and, the windows are newspapered over, or, so you're finding something where, a set decorator, production designer could come in, and I'm presenting their framework. It's up to them to bring in the details, but you're going for a sense, a broad stroke of something, a stone facade that a character, runs around the corner of, and you're in Milwaukee, so you're looking for those, like, textural bits and breadcrumbs that then the rest of the show, it's in the creative arts world now to make that happen. I've given them the framework. Yeah.
So, it's interesting you bring that up, and both of you have mentioned other departments within a production. So, most people think locations is just out there finding the location and their job is done. And a lot of times that's not the case, because both of you have mentioned the art department. Let's talk about your relationship with other departments and how important that link is in the creative process, because although it's, a department under a production, you're really creatives working together.
Let me just let me run by a list real quick of the departments that we serve in a production. Director, art department, set deck, construction, painters, camera, transportation, grips, electric, sound, props, special effects, visual effects. The AD department, stunts, wardrobe, hair and makeup, video village, background catering, craft service, greens, second unit, and wranglers. That's the short list.
Anybody
Yeah.
else?
I mean, that's every one of those wants something from location.
You didn't
every
mention
one of
all
those.
the vendors, Todd.
I know, plus all the vendors. Yeah, that's a whole other list, right? And the vendors are key. And one of the things that has made New Mexico successful is a lot of the vendors moved here and came here. When I first did my first movie here, it was difficult.
Yeah.
To get certain services, but we serve all those different departments. All those departments want something, whether it's where their truck is parked, where they can park their car, laying lines for electric, grips, doing the, putting up stresses and things like that they need for production prior to coming there. So I've got an assistant over here and I got an assistant over there, prepping for art department to continually to get into places and out of places, and who else needs to go in there, construction, electric and grips, where are they going to put the generator? I mean, it is like, finding the location is exciting. It's like a challenge, and it's creative and all that, but real creativity also exists in every department that we serve, because that becomes the details. The details is in order for that camera to roll, we have to serve all of those departments and make all those vendors show up on time. And so it's really, the complication of that becomes, it becomes the required need for really good assistance and really good people working, and the cooperation of those departments.
Yeah, thanks for that, Todd. I think you said a really magical word in my book, and it's serve. You're serving the other departments. So, Cyndy, let's get your take on this and the trust that needs to be built, because I look at a locations manager, even the scout, as part of the producing team, they're making a lot happen for the entire production and all the different departments and the community. Let's talk about the trust that needs to be built quickly with producers and directors that come to town to decide whether they're going to shoot here.
Well, thank you for that, because locations was not even recognized as a department on an IMDb list until 2 years ago. I mean, it's everybody's a location scout. You know, I can't tell you how many times like a van driver full of with producers and stuff in the van is like, well, you're looking for a bar, you know, and he goes, oh, have you seen my cousin's bar on the west side? And then the producer turns around and looks at you, yeah, have you seen that? And I'm like, oh gosh, you know, just why didn't you just sit? Yes, I have seen it. It's on Coors Boulevard. It's hugely noisy. It's a middle building. And then now you're off, you know, chasing the van driver's brother's bar. The producer is like, we'd better go see that, you know? And so that's, you know, when there isn't that trust where it's like, I am the professional, you know, you drive the van, I do my job. Let me, you know, present this. There is a method to this madness, but there is a concept of, it's changing, you know, in respect for the Department of Locations. And they do different things in different states. There's a lot on the plate of Locations Department in New Mexico. We do a lot of logistical details that are farmed out, you know, in other areas. But, you know, usually we sort of go, when we're making a budget with a producer, you know, they're like, why is your budget so high? And you're like, well, I'm doing barricading, I'm hiring security, I'm covering floors, I'm doing heating and cooling, I'm making space for catering. And they're like, oh, do you need more people? You know, at the end of it, you sure this is enough money for, you know, what all you have to do? But so, you know, that happens on some occasions, that they're feeling you out. They maybe, you know, you're working on building the trust. But the favorite moments to me are like, Adam Bernstein's a director he's probably directed more episodes of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul than any director, and the crews just love him because he's, you know, he's confident, he's boom, 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 you know, 10-hour days, 2 takes, 4 takes at a location. And my favorite moment is, you know, we've tech scouted stuff and he's like, he's just not happy with something. He, you know, he would come to me and say, any other, you know, gas station locations, you know, it has to be at this side of town, you know, you found out because of logistics, it has to be on that end of town. It's a night scene, you know, Mike's making a phone call at a gas station at night, and, you know, it's the end of the day, and Adam Bernstein comes into the office and he's like, you got anything? And I'm like, yeah, I think I do. Come on, let's go. And he hops in my car and we like drive out there to see it at night. And he's like, yeah, okay. And he starts like, it's just he and I and maybe his assistant. He starts plotting out his shots. He's like, this will work great, you know. And then, so it's like that moment of trust where you know, show me something I haven't seen before, Cyndy, and I actually know what they've seen, and I know what they've seen already. So I'm like, got something new for you. Come on, let's go. And that sort of collaborative spirit and trust, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, thank you for that. Todd, how many miles have you put on your cars over the years?
I could guess it at like 500,000 at least. You know, I mean, a production is usually for me 14 to 16,000 miles, at least that. You know, and they add up. But I go where I need to go.
Somebody from the audience just asked, how many cars have you gone through?
Yeah, I think I'm on my 7th.
Cyndy, how many miles on your vehicles?
Well, I'm on my 4th Subaru. I sort of max them out at 300,000 miles every 5 to 6 years.
Wow.
And, you know, then get the next one. And you know, and I do scout throughout the state, not quite like Todd does, but I'm keep in mind that 300,000 miles is probably driving 30 to 60 mile concentric circles again and again and again and again and again and again.
Yeah. Another question that just came through, and I think it's a really interesting question. You know, you've built relationships throughout the state and in the city of Albuquerque with location owners. Has there been a time where either of you have had to say, this is it, this is the only option, deal with it, to a director or producer?
Yes.
Or have you always had options?
No, sometimes sometimes there's only, or like in Sicario, we were going to do the entrance to this military base at the state fairgrounds, but we changed our schedule at different times, and they were going to have these Appaloosa. The Appaloosa showroom was right where the entrance was, so I had to find another location. I found one, which was the gas company down in 4th Street or something, and that was going to work, and there was a lot of work to get it done, but I couldn't talk to their lawyer. Their lawyer was on vacation, so I couldn't find it. So I jumped and I went over towards Costco, and there's the water department, and I said, I'm going to jump that fence. I might have to jump the fence. I got to get this. So I sent a note to Ann Lerner, and also I realized that I had scouted that place before, right when they were building it 5 years prior, and had a relationship with a guy. I saved all my emails from productions. I found his email and I added him onto the email. In the morning, I got an email that said, Todd, this is who you talk to, and I've told them to give you everything you ask for. And that's that whole thing about building a relationship and about, being pushed into a corner. And then I said, this is it. This is the only thing there is. And they said, it's better than the first one.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
better than the second one. It's the best, and sometimes every time I've lost a location for whatever circumstances, I always found a better one. And I don't know how that works, man, but it did.
Yep.
He's the Zen master of location. He's the location whisperer.
Absolutely. So, look, a few topics I want to cover, during this conversation. One is the permitting process, because, you don't just show up in a state or a city and all of a sudden, hey, get the camera gear and the crew together. Talk about the permitting process from the location side. And Cyndy, if you want to talk about it from the film office side, and how many permits are being submitted now with the growth of the industry.
Well, initially, a production is going to want to register with the state of New Mexico film office so that they have access to incentives and that kind of thing. And Todd can speak probably more to that. On the city level, a code of conduct is required to be signed by any production that wants to work here. They have to provide a certificate of insurance, naming the city of Albuquerque as additional insured. And then we have it's working really well now, and it sort of, had its genesis during the pandemic. Our online permitting system is really straightforward. I have 2 experts in the office, Santana Garcia and Rebecca Cavalier, who help process that, and they've been with the city for years and really know the ins and outs. But so that permitting lets us reach out. There's a permitting committee that signs off on the permit. So the production makes their request, and then it has to be run by fire department, roads, solid waste, metro development, police. There's a large committee that has to give their okay. Is there a caterer? Do they have their food, health and safety permit? There's a lot of levels to that, to like getting to on the street. A production has to provide an overhead of their plan, an overview of where the equipment's going to be parked, the generators. They have to have selected a base camp. They can't base camp on the streets. They have to have an off-site area to put their star trailers or catering, that kind of thing. But equipment that has to be near their location, that'll show us in the overhead. They have to work with a professional barricading company to come up with a traffic control plan. That's a specific kind of a document that it gives this barricading company. They create the parameters for, diverting traffic or closing streets. And then those all have to get approved. So there's a lot of moving parts to getting a permit. There's no charge by the city. Our office does not charge for permits, which is unusual. I think most cities do. There's other charges for purchasing parking or barricades, that kind of thing. But
so let me just add to this real quick. I know from experience working with different productions that have had location managers and productions that have not had location managers, and it always seems the permitting goes smoothly, quickly, and efficiently when a location manager is involved.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's because they know what needs to be done. I mean, I won't say the show, I was brought on a show and they didn't think they needed a location manager on it. And the guy who was the production supervisor was doing all this stuff. He had no idea. And they called me up. And they said, first they said, we don't think we need a location manager. I said, tell me how that works out for you. And then they called me and I did it, and they realized, what had to be done. But there's also the other thing about permits. There's city permits. There's also the DOT permits. There's a BLM, which is federal, and that takes time, and the best way is you build up relationships with people so that you can maybe cut that time. It's usually, 3 to 6 weeks. And then the federal government with national forests. And those are all key locations for New Mexico because there are a lot of land. The permit for filming on our indigenous lands are the contract. When you do a contract with a pueblo or a tribe, then that is the permit for those places because it's sovereign land. And so that relationship is good. And then you also find out where you can go and where you can't go. And I know what you can do because I have a son from a pueblo. And so I know the questions to ask them in order to determine whether it's the right place to go or, the circumstances. Like on a pueblo, when somebody dies, they shut it down. And so is that going to happen? And can we still film there, and if there's a ceremony or something that happens, you find even in Albuquerque and stuff, you find out where there's events so that you don't cross over with some parade or some event that you don't know about. In the city and the state usually knows about those things. And there's all these things that a location manager does to think ahead of the possibilities that might stop the camera from rolling,
Yes, with all of that being said, Todd and Cyndy, both of you can answer this. Run through a typical day of a locations manager while filming. I mean, it seems like you have to be attentive to anything that can come up.
Well, it starts in the middle of the night where you wake up and think, did I order dumpsters?
Yep.
And and I was somebody who always opened the set. I pretty much always opened sets. So I would wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, make sure
Open and close the day.
And I would have somebody close the day, or I would check on them to make sure, part of the whole thing about being a location manager is learning how to delegate. And so that part is done. But I know how crazy when they're going to a new location, if they're at a location for a while, sometimes I won't open it up, but most of the times I do. I just feel safe. I feel like if they see me there, production director, production designer, et cetera, sees me there, they feel better. So I set that up as a consistent way. And then it's all about knowing the location well enough. So if there's a fire, if something happens, that you know what you need to do in order to take care of that. And that's why there's always somebody from locations at a location in case something changes. Like a lot of times what I learned is like they'll want to look this way, and that's where they're going to shoot. That's where they're going to look. Now, what I learned a long time ago is that you permit 360. And so then they go like, hey, Todd, can we look back this way? I've already talked to those people. I already know that we can do that. I've already made arrangements that we can do that. And so they turn around and shoot that way. So whoever's on set, or not a lot of times I get calls if I'm not on set, is that you're prepared to answer any question that comes up in order to keep the camera rolling. The whole thing for me has been to keep the camera rolling. It's to not stop the camera from rolling by any hiccup that might happen, and they happen.
Yeah, so Cyndy, Todd, on features and film, television is the same thing. Are you there day in and day out in the morning to evening when they wrap for the day?
Well, you'd be a sleepless wraith if you did that, so it is like Todd said, is you delegate, typically a team would be, it depends on how big a series is. This recent series I was on, we had 2 dedicated location managers. We had 8 assistant location managers. We had about 20 production assistants, all for locations. And because we were a lot of far-ranging places. And so, but with a series, kind of what's happening is that you are prepping, you are filming, you are wrapping simultaneously all the time. So you have to be able to break your team up. So who's going to be with the prep crew that needs, it's probably going to be an assistant location manager and a production assistant that, has intimate knowledge of the place. They've been there since day one. Okay, they're landing the painters. Okay, now the set decorators are coming. Okay, now the location owner's dog has run away. Go find it. Okay, now there's a tenant in this hotel up floor who's had a heart attack. Who call the ambulance. I mean, they're doing all these things as part of prep. This happens during filming too sometimes. But okay, now the the electricians are prepping their work, for the next day's filming. So that's going on, but you might also have another team that's wrapping up the location you were at the day before. So they're finishing out, they have their trash trailer, everything's getting picked up, barricades are getting picked up, lighting equipment's going home. And then you have the team that's filming. It was, you've had some young guy who's opened up the parking lot and set up, we have the lights so everyone can see where to park safely at before dawn. And then the big, the crew probably has landed the night before in the base camp, catering's up and running at the break of day, and vans are running, into set, so there's a lot of places on a series that, you're popping in here, you're popping in there as a manager to oversee, but you have a strong team, so you can feel confident in delegating.
And I want to add something that's really important that has become more important over the years, is that the ability to say no. Like I have said no to directors, big time directors. You can't do that. And there was a production, I said, if you do this, I'll leave the show.
Does that come down to safety, or?
And it's all about safety. It's all about safety, or doing something that's not permitted. I said, I'll call the permit office and see if I can get this done, or something like that. Like I did this commercial, and they tell me the day of, they're going to do this snow effect at a state park. And I said, that's not permitted, so you can't do it. And they said, well, this director doesn't like to hear the word no. And I said, well, let me talk to him. I've told the biggest directors in movies in Hollywood no. I'll be happy to tell him no. And I went to him and I told him, I said, you can't do that. I mean, that, I'm sorry, you didn't tell me ahead of time, it's not permitted. You're not going to dirty my name in this state. You're coming in here from somewhere else. And so we worked out a way to do the snow effect where they did it right in front of the person's face. I had tarp down below. And so I found a way for them to do it without breaking the permit, to getting permission from the state. And so, I'll do anything to give a production what they want, but I won't break the rules. I won't break a permit. I won't do something that's against the police, that makes it unsafe for any different place. I won't do it.
I'm assuming, one of the main, a part of your responsibility is keeping the police and the fire teams away from productions, so they don't have to show up. So safety is definitely a big key thing in film and television. I know how seriously the crews take it here, but I see the location manager as this artist with a canvas in front of them that brings all of these beautiful colors to light to make a production happen. There's a question from the audience. How do we get on location managers' support teams? How do they become an assistant or a PA and work their way up?
Well, here, Cyndy, you can probably answer it better, but they register with the union, and then try to find somebody to get in touch with. Like I've had lots of people over the years call me and tell me, like, how do I get on a job? And I give them certain protocols that they need to do in order to get on. Like I think the IATSE is doing more classes, that they're initiating more classes. I think Goodwill is doing some classes for assistants. There's a lot of ways. I'm going to start going around with the Academy and also with IPCC and Red Nation to start to take classes to the pueblos and the tribes and different areas where inclusion is becoming more and more important to start to let them know what this job is and how it's done in other jobs too.
So let's switch over to notable movies and television shows that have been filmed in Albuquerque and New Mexico.
Oh man, I mean, you know, the Sicarios, Only
Yep.
the Brave, Paul, which was, you know, I keep hearing things about Paul.
Yep.
12 Strong, which I did, and that was one that was actually finally one that was DOD approved. So I filmed at White Sands Missile Range, and there they were going to make us move in and out of that place, and so I set up a meeting with the producer and myself with the head of the White Sands Missile Range, the general, and the different people that were taking us around. And so in that meeting, the producer said some things, and I said what it takes for a production to move from one place and back to another. Like there, it's all, you know, people have to be screened, and it's a process to get in. So I explained all that, and then the guy, the head of it, said, like, this is an Army movie, you know, we're Army. What's hey, the guys that were taking us around, what's their priority? They said low priority. He said, General, let's make it high priority. They gave us high priority. They moved any of their tests out, and partly they did it because I explained it in a way that the military would understand. The military moves people into places and out of places not dissimilar from what we do. And we do it in a way like when I leave a place, and Cyndy knows this, when I leave a place, you can come there the next day and don't know that a production was there, because I have cleaners clean everything, every cigarette butt, everything that needs to be cleaned and taken care of, so the neighborhood's happy, you know, everybody else is happy. There's, you know, I mean, the movies that have been to the Coen brothers, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I mean, it just, there's so many great movies that come here, and they come here because of all the things Cyndy mentioned. It's like we have crew, we have easy permitting, we have diverse locations, very diverse locations, and part of the location manager's job is to show them the diversity of how they can make that script happen.
Cyndy, you know, speaking of that, with diversity in locations, you know, I think Albuquerque is a very diverse city on many levels. What are your hopes for your new position in the film office, you know, in terms of the growth of the industry here?
Sure. Just to Todd, though, I'm rhapsodizing to myself about sweeping tire tracks out of Ghost Ranch
Right.
with a broom.
Oh.
I'm the crazy lady sweeping dirt with a broom, you know, after a location. I'm like, oh, we didn't do this. No, so hopes and aspirations. I mean, of course, the pandemic really slowed the level of, you know, the amount of filming, and but this summer it's just it's on steroids. We processed 30 permits just about in August, and each permit we process takes about 8 hours of manpower to process the permit, and that represents, you know, a carnival that's landed on a street somewhere in Albuquerque. So, you know, daily there is a movie happening near you, and we're on that same sort of level for this month, and there's you know, multiple large productions stacking up to come in to Albuquerque, prepping to come in this January, and they require stage space, you know, and there's the, you know, the expansion going on at Netflix, but so we're you wouldn't believe the different kind of places that are being repurposed as stage space now, you know, to accommodate these shows coming in. And so that's an aspirational goal to, you know, get spaces online, you know, for whether it be, and we're working with, you know, we have business partners who are helping us provide office suites for production teams, and, you know, warehouse spaces to hold props or to build temporary sets. So just to build up that sort of portfolio of space available. And then also, to your question about training, to how do people get involved in the industry, become part of an industry team, the training programs and the workforce is super important to keep that growing at a steady pace as well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, kind of thing. How do you train a workforce if you don't have a place for them to go into the job? How do you bring the job in if you don't have the workforce to support it? So
Sure.
sort of, trying to do that juggling act, in the film office. The best place for people to get trained up into the location department or any other department is to start as a production assistant. And there's resources on the state film office where people can find location managers, send your resume, make a call. And you probably would, be put on, fire watch, here, watch this building,
Right.
and you're like, oh my God, this is so boring. But you're the fly on the wall as a production assistant to, you learn so much, being in that position and decide what department you want to work in. But so aspirational goals.
I can, sorry to interrupt, but I can say this. It's like I've been on sets, with some clients, and just in a day, how much I learned about what happens on a production and how it happens and who does it is absolutely amazing. So become a PA, get into the union, work your way up if you're looking to get into the industry. You're not, I don't think we're going to walk in the door and become a location manager overnight. You need the experience. So
background actor. I mean, you can,
I've had background actors come and say, like, how do I do what you do? And different people, and also the enthusiasm. And the other thing is to take directions, is to listen to the protocols that you need. Like I had a show, I brought a guy on the first time, and he kept going behind the camera. And finally, the director came over to me and he said, get him out of here. And I just moved him away. I told him what the deal was. He was just excited, but you don't, there's certain things you don't do. And you need to learn those things in order to, get the respect of the location manager first and then the other departments.
So Cyndy, let's talk about, and we're talking about scouting and locations, not the job with the city. Why do you love your job? Yeah, why do you love it?
I just, I'm curious. I want to know, I want to problem solve. There's a lot of detective work involved in like finding locations. I speak to, community members from, the guy pushing a broom, street cleaning, to, the owner of a mansion or a director of a museum of fine art, and I interact with government personnel and law enforcement. I mean, I just, it's stimulating on so many levels, and I like being out. I like fresh air. That's the hardest thing about this is I'm in an office, and I've been living like a feral cat, for the last 10 years, eating my meals in my car, but I'm just, it fits my personality. I want to be out. I'm curious. I love talking with people. I love discovery. I mean, there's so many cool things I've discovered that I'm like, I hold on to that for 10 years. I'm like, I'm going to bring a movie there someday. And then when it happens, you're like, woohoo, lights go off and it's fun. It's just, I love film crews. They're like some of the hardest working, loyal people, considerate people. I love that I worked in commercial production for a while where you wear all the hats, you're casting, you're finding locations, you're getting catering. What I loved about coming into the film world was everybody it is military, like Todd said, in a way. And in fact, militaries have studied entertainment for, Barnum and Bailey inspired, armies of like, wow, the logistics, they can build a big top, put it up in a town one day, get 5,000 people in there, load everything on the train.
Doesn't look like it's there the next day. Yep.
And so I love that logistics of it. I love the teamwork aspect of film, and and what's not to love?
Yeah. And I'm like left brain, right brain, so I came from the creative world. I came from the art world into locations, and I came from the art world, and every odd job on the planet. You know what I mean? So that those end up becoming skills. But I
Pull
love
your resources over your career.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh, absolutely. I love that the collaboration, that takes place, and when I'm scouting in that, it's never lonely. It's solitude. It's beautiful solitude. And in terms of the focus that I put on finding a place and listening to my instincts while I'm looking for a place, all those things that take place are exciting to me. And then I see from the beginning the process and what it takes to and I start to envision all those things. And to me, it's, and Cyndy I completely agree with this. We are critical to helping tell the story. We are part of a storytelling group. We are a foundation to telling a story. And I love stories. I love stories being told visually. And so that part, I was always a reader. I always read books. And now it's like, then I read hundreds of scripts, and I love making those words and those descriptions come to life. And that part is like, and then, then we go and watch it, the work that we've done and the pride that I have for not only myself, but my crew and the people that I've worked with. We're hugging each other. It's a beautiful thing. Making movies and making TV series are a remarkable place to put your life, and hopefully they'll cut the hours down a little bit.
Yeah, that's the only downside might be, burning the candle at both ends. But
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say this, I have friends and colleagues and associates that are union members, and I've seen accidents because of long hours or lack of meals or whatever. And, I and our organization are 100% behind the union in making sure they get what they need. So I hope it doesn't come down to a strike. But if it does, we'll be side by side with them. And I know you will as well.
I mean, this is like a key time. I think a lot of changes can happen. COVID is actually showing us that there's a lot of things that can be changed, and there's a lot of there's a lot of work that can be done in a more efficient way. And with, what I realized at the beginning of making movies was that there's a lot of fear, because there's a lot of money thrown at something they hope makes money. They don't know. They hope that they have a script that's going to do that. So there's a lot of money behind it. And so with a lot of money, there's fear by certain people that sort of runs it. And in my part in that was to eliminate any amount of fear that would come from my department in what's being delivered. But I hope for those changes. I hope for some changes. I think it can work for all sides.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have about 2 or 3 minutes left. I think today was an education for a lot of people that are tuning in. And if you haven't, people that did miss this one for whatever reason, if they're working, it's going to be available till October 11th. Look, you mentioned something a few minutes ago, Todd, that you take pride in seeing that finished product. From each of you quickly, what movie or TV show were you excited to see come out and see it on that big screen or on the wide screen? Which one did you take most pride in?
Oh man. Well, I take most pride in all of them, but working with the Coen brothers on the Ballad of Buster Scruggs was special. I had wanted to work with those guys. They're on my bucket list. And I worked with great directors before. And so being able to deliver for them was really important for me, and also to see them work the way they were. So when I went and saw it on the big screen. I mean, it came out on Netflix, but I went and saw it on the big screen twice. And because it was just magnificent,
What was it like seeing the locations that you selected up on that big screen in that product?
Every time, even with Only the Brave, which was one of the hardest movies I've ever done, because it was a fire movie, and all over the place. And to see that on the screen successfully done, and that movie will become more and more important as time goes on, the value of firefighters. So I try to have pride in all of them, but there's some, that I really put it at the top of the list. And working with Joel and Ethan and those producers, Bob Graff and Karen, were amazing.
Cyndy, what about you?
Do I have to choose? There's so many.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's so many.
We're
and you love
lucky.
all of them. It's choose one or two.
They're all babies, that you birth. But no, I working with the team at Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul was great, and just the family that was built around those shows, and just the writing is outstanding. And I'm a reader too, like Todd, and I just when you get that script that you're just so excited to read, and so great storytelling in both of those series. And I also Preacher, the first season of Preacher was another AMC series that was just so weird. I was just like, oh my God, these characters. And I had to find a rural place where a car crashes, but it's actually been a plane crash, and it's like, is this guy a vampire? What is this? And just like the quirkiness of that was so fun. We filmed a lot in the little town of Belen, and turning that into someplace else, and just every episode was a surprise and fun. I love this recent Amazon series, Outer Range, and just seeing different parts of the state and some of I haven't seen it on screen yet though, so I guess I have to put that till I actually see that. I remember sitting in the dark with you, Todd, and watching when they did Let There Be Blood, and
yes,
how fun that was to see that on the big screen. It's just Briar Patch was an NBC. Some of them were so eclectic that they didn't get traction, but Briar Patch was based with Rosario Dawson, was a really fun show. A lot of zoo animals crazily everywhere.
And I want to mention Sicario really quickly, because we filmed at Laguna Pueblo the first time in 42 years. They filmed there. So there were some iconic places that were done there. And Denny Villeneuve, a great gentleman and wonderful to work with, and the producers were, when the ones that stand out, it's the team, it's the locations, but it's also this thing that you see and happening, where it starts with 4 people, then 8, then 15, then 30, then 100, and it grows, and you get to watch it grow from locations.
Well, like a production, there is a time to come to an end, and we have to wrap. But this to me, I think locations is a department that needs to get the respect from everyone and really understand kind of the details of what it takes and what it entails. And I think the two of you have definitely explained that today. And I am so appreciative. Our organization's appreciative. The viewers, our entire team is really, really appreciative of the two of you coming on today and talking with us about, the excitement of the film industry here in Albuquerque and New Mexico, and what you do and what the future looks like. So Cyndy McCrossen, thank you. Todd Christiansen, nothing but love to both of you. I'm going to hand it over to Kira to wrap it up for us. And thank you again. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks a lot, Ivan.
Thank you, Todd, Cyndy, and Ivan. That was an extraordinary conversation. Yes, I agree with Ivan. We have a special place in our hearts for locations. And thank you both so much for making New Mexico look as awesome as it is. I really appreciate both of your passion and your enthusiasm, and I can't wait to work on your team. Seriously. So stay tuned. Just a reminder that all of our Center Stage conversations are recorded, and they will be available online through October 11th. Next up is our Center Stage conversation with spoken word artist Hakeem Bellamy, one of our local heroes here in Albuquerque, and poetic voice Sekou Andrews, talking about the art of the spoken word. So I hope you can join us at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Until then, have a great day.
Thank you.